what's kind of happening? How are you able to juggle all these businesses and a family life and write all these books? I mean, what's going on?
That's a great question. Let me tell a story first about how I got into writing, because when I met Sid Banks, he said to me, well, Joe, because I just had this little small practice in Minneapolis and was young, 33-year-old guy. And he said, someday you'll be traveling around the world and you'll be writing books and you'll be teaching in universities and all this. And I thought, this guy's really crazy. I know, right? I'm afraid of public speaking. All of these things were in my scope of what I thought I was capable of. And after practicing the principles, teaching the principles, counseling people for about 7 years, I was giving a talk at a treatment center. And a publisher walked up to me and he said, Joe, hello, I'm so-and-so, and I'm from this publishing company, and we would like you to write a book about what you're teaching. And I said, oh, you've got the wrong guy. I don't teach. I don't write. I was told not to go to college because of my poor verbal skills, and so I just, you got the wrong guy. And he said, no. He says, you've got really creative new material here. This is what we're looking for in our publishing house, and we would like you to write a book about this, and we'll help you with the writing. Well, I'll edit your book, and don't worry about it. And so all of a sudden I went back to my old thinking about writing. I said, okay. And I sat down to start writing my book. And I got into all my old thinking about making an outline and figuring out what you were going to say before you said it. And, all of the grammar and all of that kind of just filled my screen. And I got up at 4 a.m. because that's what writers do. And I sat down at the computer and nothing would come. I was just 3 hours staring blankly at the screen. And I came back to bed with my wife and I said, I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't write. Nothing is coming. And she says, well, what were you doing? And I said, well, I was trying to write the introduction because that was the first thing on the outline. And she says, well, why don't you write about what you're inspired to write about? And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. And I just thought, well, what am I inspired about? And the one chapter I felt inspired to write, it came to me, and I went back in, and my hands got so sore from writing, and I couldn't keep up with it. It just flowed out of me. So what happened in that moment was that I got rid of my idea of creativity in the form of writing, and I got out of the way. And like you said, those extra thoughts were cleared, and what was left was this flood of experiences that I'd had working with alcoholics. And so I wrote the Serenity Principle in my first book, and it was so easy. It was just so easy. I couldn't believe it. I wish I knew that when I was in graduate school. But it was just so simple to write. And then some days I would forget that and I would try to write. Or I would get into overanalyzing what I was writing, trying to write it properly or whatever. And all of that would go in the wastebasket. And what came from the purity of mind, just that inspiration, was the creative. And that was my voice. That was my real voice. And it was clear. It was simple. And I still had it edited, of course, for grammar and all of that. But the raw material was just creative. And that kind of getting our thinking about writing or playing the guitar or drawing or any expression of the creative, giving a talk, planning your garden. It doesn't really matter. Creativity is everything. It's not just about artistic, creative endeavors. When you have that presence of mind, you are in that creative flow. And I play guitar too. And when I play music, if I'm in my head, the fingers just don't work. If I'm enjoying playing, it works. The chords know, the hands know where the chords are. The fingers know what to do, and I'm just feeling the music, and it's coming through. I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, but it's coming through. So now I'm new at music. I started learning guitar when I was 60. I'm 65 now. And so it was like, guitar is not easy in terms of, getting your fingers to do these contorted positions and getting calluses and all that. But once I got the basics down and I was able to get out of the way, I really started to enjoy writing music and writing songs and creating in a way. And I saw that what I learned from writing it was equally applicable to playing music, to skiing, to being with my grandkids, to everything I do. It's just, life is play. Life in the moment is play. When you're a kid and I'm with my 9-year-old every day now, my 9-year-old grandson, and he's so imaginative and creative. And we took him to a magic shop last night because he really wants to be a magician. And there was the magic shop was closed, but the magic shop owner happened to be going in to check on something, and he invited us in the store, spent an hour and a half with my grandson, teaching him all these tricks. And he was in absolute heaven. He was just like, my grandson was in heaven, and so was the magician in heaven, to see a 9-year-old wake up to the world of magic. And it was play. It was the same creative principle in operation. The timing of life, the flow of life. It's just, we're just riding along on this river of creativity, and you can step in the river anytime. And when you see you're thinking in the moment, and you get your own personal thought, kind of, it clears the decks for you. You don't have to do anything. You just ride this river, this wave, and it just takes you in places you can't even imagine it would take you. And that's what imagination is. It's the figment of your imagination. Is this the muse, or whatever you want to call it. You could call it mind, you call it the divine intelligence of all things, you could call it supernatural consciousness. We've put all kinds of names on it, but it's just thought and moment come to us in a way that resonates with the world as beauty, as truth, as knowing. And that's really what art is, and creativity is truth. Whether it's in a picture or a piece of music or a talk about how life works.
Yeah, it's nice that you mentioned doing talks, because I hadn't really seen it as a creative thing. But when I first started sharing this, I remember doing a really impactful talk with myself and Jenny, and then doing another talk that really wasn't very impactful. And when I reflect on it, the only difference is that the first talk, we didn't really have anything on our minds. We didn't have a why we wanted to do it. We weren't trying to use certain words and not use others. We weren't trying to come across in a certain way. There's like an absence of thinking. And then the talk that we did do really well, there was just any of that, you know. It was just kind of effortless, and it's the same. It is wonderful, you know, because, you know, talking about this to people, and I interviewed another person about this, and he just says, like, when you're not really present, you're really you're really impactful, and when you're very present, you're not so impactful. He kind of said that in a different way, but of course you're always present. But when you said presence of mind, you know, the presence of mind, that's powerful, rather than your own complicated, the presence of your own complicated thinking. That's constricting.
Right. And I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people, when they're teaching these principles, this paradigm, will get in their head about it and try and be second guessing themselves, you know, oh, is this the right way to say it? Is this the wrong way, you know? And it's driving with the parking brake on, you know. You got X amount of, you're not really in that flow, and you do the engineering ahead of time. You know, you learn everything you can about the paradigm, about the principles, you know, through your own listening, reading, however you learn from your trainer, you know, your coach. But and when you're in your creative mode, you're coaching, you're teaching, you got to let go of all that stuff. This is my feeling. It's whatever you need to remember will come to you. But if I'm second guessing, if I'm editing as I'm going, I can't write. I have to write, and I'll edit later. Just like you'll edit this interview later. But if we are editing while we're talking, it's not going to be a very good interview. Right. Oh, wait a minute. Could you say that one more time in a different way? But say it with this words that, you know, it would not work. You know, when you're playing music with a group, you're going to make mistakes. You don't stop and say, "Okay, start the song over again." You just keep playing and try to. The audience won't notice that you missed that chord or forgot that entire verse. You just keep playing, right? Well, it's the same with public speaking. You've got to get the personal you out of it and have that presence of mind. And I mean mind. The presence of mind that's a big statement, isn't? I didn't even realize it until you were just talking about what I said. And I'm like, wow, that was something where did that come from? You know, it must have been from mine too, because I don't even know what I was saying when I said, you know what I mean? And that's usually the best stuff, is when you don't even know what you're saying, and what you're saying is just coming out. But that's just how I see it. And I always feel that's when I've really connected with a group, is when I'm enjoying myself, I'm really connected to them, and my awareness is out there with them, and really just connecting to them and making sure they're connecting to what I'm saying. You know, is this making sense, you know, to you? I can tell, I can feel it, but I'm not just spewing my own thoughts. I'm having a relationship with my audience. It's communication. It's communication. It's a communion of people, mind connecting with mind, heart connecting with heart, soul connecting to soul. However you want to say that, but when you really connect with someone, there's something happens that settles people and makes room for their own insights to happen. It's like I grew up in the nursery business. My father grew trees, flowers, and plants, and he was a horticulturist. So he knew the science of how to grow things. And the seed grew itself. But the farmer the nurseryman had to provide the good soil, the nutrients, the right time to plant, the knowledge of knowing when to plant so it didn't freeze, plenty of moisture and sunlight, and taking out all that wasn't the plant, the weeds, so it had room to grow. And I see my job as kind of like a mind horticulturist. You know, I can't make people have insight. I can't give them an insight, but I can provide the atmosphere through my own living in my resilience to whatever degree I can do that in the moment, in mind, through my own understanding, that, and then helping them understand how this works through my stories, through my examples, through my life experience. That's my teaching. And that has the most power. If you talk about someone else's experiences, it can be helpful too, but your own experience is really something you know about from the inside out, firsthand, and it has more impact. It's like plucking the weeds.
Yeah.
And then the creativity has room to grow.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, like when next week I go up to my cabin up north, and I love to go there because it's very tranquil and very peaceful, and there's no phones. So it's kind of a geographical space that I create when I want to create. I'm editing videos and right next week. So but I can have that wherever. It's not like about a place, but we can intentionally create space to be reflective. You know, at the beginning of our day, to have some quiet time with a cup of tea, and we can do that intentionally because it's nourishing.
Yeah.
I love that time of reflection. I just love it because it's so. I have to have room for doing nothing, for something to come.
Mm-hmm.
So the nothingness, you know, the physicists are talking about this. You know, most of everything is nothing. It's that dark energy, or what do they call it? Black energy, or I can't remember, but they've discovered that most of what makes up what we call the universe is this dark energy that you can't see. And that's where everything that you can see comes from. So it's kind of like that with creativity. It's just the quiet mind, the still mind, the mind at peace, the mind with less thought, is this creative potentiality for everything. And it's always the most incredible feeling when you experience a creative moment, a thought, a word on a page, an idea that you hadn't had before. When you have that, doesn't it feel joyful? There's a joy and an awe, like, wow, where did that come from? Wow, they just out of the blue, I had this thought, and you feel like you're part of something bigger when that happens. That you feel so big and expansive, rather than, oh, I've got to come up with this brilliant idea, you know, in my own little mind, you know, and that's pressure, you know, and that's ego, and that's effort. And so creativity seems to have this, not that you can't have creative ideas under pressure, or you know, that you come up with something in a crisis that you never would have, you know, so creativity isn't limited to having a quiet mind all the time. That's another myth. But it's when you're slowed down to the speed of that moment. That's it's like the gap, that gap between thoughts where new thought can spring.
Well, we're out of time. So, Joe, if anyone listening to this would like to get in contact with you or have a look at your website or anything, what's the best way for people to do that?
Well, I have a new website that is up and running, but not quite complete yet. It's Joe Bailey and Associates, or also resiliencerealization.com. Either of those.
Great.
So that's probably the best way to reach me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with all of us. I very much appreciate it, and I've really enjoyed our discussion. So thank you.
Well, me too, Rudy. And you know, it's always interesting. I can't wait to watch what came out, because I have no idea what I'm saying when I'm saying it. So I'll be as amused as the people watching this.